On a quiet Sunday afternoon in May 2015, a storm of violence erupted inside Tecumseh State Correctional Institution, a maximum security prison in southeastern Nebraska. Inmates seized control of 2 housing units, causing chaos that lasted for several hours, before the staff, with the help of tactical teams, finally regained control around 1 a.m. the following morning. By the time the riot was quelled, 2 inmates, Donald Peacock and Sean Collins, both serving long sentences for sex crimes, were dead, and several other inmates and staff were left injured. The prison was left in ruins. Fires had scorched parts of the facility. Security cameras and windows were smashed, and entire walls were torn down. Staff members, including one who had barricaded herself in a gym office for safety, had to be rescued from their posts as the rioting intensified. According to reports, the unrest started with about 40 inmates gathering outside one of the housing units, and when guards tried to disperse them, the situation escalated. Warning shots were fired, and eventually, an officer had to shoot an inmate in the leg to prevent further violence. This wasn't an isolated incident. It marked a breaking point for a prison system that had been suffering from severe overcrowding, understaffing, and deteriorating conditions for years. Tecumseh, while relatively new and less overcrowded than other Nebraska prisons, was operated at 105% of its capacity at the time. Inmates and staff alike had long voiced concerns over the unsafe conditions, with mandatory overtime and long hours driving away corrections officers. The facility's remote location only compounded these issues, making it difficult to hire and retain staff. This violent outbreak wasn't a one-off event. It was a symptom of a much larger problem. Even as officials scrambled to restore order at Tecumseh, the question lingered: how long could they maintain control over a facility on the brink of collapse? Welcome back to Chasing Crime. Today, we're diving into Tecumseh State Correctional Institution, a facility that might not come to mind when you think of dangerous prisons. But don't be fooled. Despite Nebraska's quieter reputation, Tecumseh faces serious challenges of its own, making it a hotspot for violence and unrest. Tecumseh State Correctional Institution is located in the rural southeastern corner of Nebraska, about 60 miles southeast of the state's capital, Lincoln. Nestled in the quiet agricultural landscape near the town of Tecumseh, the prison's remote location was chosen to provide a secure environment away from major population centers. Opened in 2001, Tecumseh was designed as a maximum security facility meant to address Nebraska's growing problem of overcrowding and to house some of the state's most dangerous and violent offenders, including death row inmates. With a capacity of around 960 inmates, Tecumseh's primary purpose was to alleviate the pressure on Nebraska's older, more overcrowded prisons. However, over the years, it has frequently operated well above capacity, contributing to the rising tensions inside its walls. At times, the prison population has exceeded its limits, placing a strain on both resources and staff. Despite its modern design, overcrowding remains a persistent issue, as it does throughout much of Nebraska's prison system, which has been criticized for operating far above its intended capacity statewide. One of the most significant challenges Tecumseh faces is chronic understaffing. The facility's rural and isolated location has made it difficult to recruit and retain correctional officers. With few amenities and long commutes from larger cities, many potential employees are discouraged from working at the prison, leading to mandatory overtime for existing staff and increasing burnout. As a result, many officers leave after only a short time, exacerbating the staffing crisis. At times, Tecumseh has operated with dangerously low staff levels, creating an environment where both officers and inmates are at risk. Use of force at this prison to control inmates is a common occurrence. In June 2021, Tecumseh State Correctional Institution was the site of a serious incident involving an inmate with a known history of mental illness and disruptive behavior. The disturbance occurred in the common area of a housing gallery, where the inmate threatened staff, leading to a standoff that lasted several hours. In an attempt to subdue the inmate, prison staff fired around 200 projectiles at him, causing multiple injuries, with 3 rubber bullets embedded under the skin. After being removed from the area, the inmate was restrained in a 5-point therapeutic bed for over 3 hours before being transferred to the facility's mental health unit. The Nebraska Department of Correctional Services and the Office of Inspector General conducted investigations into the incident, which revealed significant mismanagement. The OIG report highlighted several key failures, including the improper application of use of force policies and the excessive time taken to bring the situation under control. There was also a lack of clear leadership and direction, resulting in the unnecessary use of both lethal and less lethal force. Mental health staff, despite the inmates' history of illness, had minimal involvement during the incident. The Office of Inspector General also noted that a similar incident involving the same inmate in December 2020 had not led to improved handling of the situation in 2021. Prior to this incident, another riot led to the death of 2 inmates. Eric Ramos was sentenced to life in prison plus 60 to 80 years for the murder of fellow inmate Michael Galindo during a violent 2017 riot at Tecumseh State Correctional Institution. Galindo was found dead in his cell after being stabbed over 100 times and dying from smoke inhalation as towels were set on fire and pushed into his cell through the broken window. Ramos was identified as one of the attackers through prison surveillance footage, which played a crucial role in his conviction. Despite claiming innocence and arguing that the video footage was unclear, Ramos was convicted in December 2022 of first-degree murder, weapon use, and tampering with evidence. This was his second trial after the first ended in a mistrial due to violations by investigators. No other inmates have been charged for their involvement in Galindo's death, and the investigation into the death of the second inmate, Damon Fitzgerald, during the same riot remains unsolved. What about inmates at this prison? The most infamous have to be the offenders on death row. Let's look at 2 of the most recent additions. Aubrey Trail, 54, was sentenced to death for the 2017 murder of Sidney Loof, a 24-year-old store clerk from Lincoln. Trail, along with his then girlfriend Bailey Boswell, lured Loof to their apartment using the dating app Tinder. Upon her arrival, they strangled her with an electrical cord and dismembered her body, disposing of the remains in trash bags along rural Nebraska roads. During his sentencing, Trail addressed Loof's family, expressing regret but stopping short of asking for forgiveness. He claimed the murder was not premeditated, stating it occurred spontaneously when Loof threatened to expose their lifestyle. However, the 3-judge panel determined that the crime exhibited exceptional depravity, a criterion for imposing the death penalty in Nebraska. Anthony Garcia, a former Creighton University medical student, was sentenced to death for the murders of 4 people across 2 separate attacks. In 2008, Garcia killed 11-year-old Thomas Hunter and the family's housekeeper, Shirley Sherman, in Omaha, Nebraska. 5 years later, in 2013, Garcia returned to Omaha and murdered Dr. Roger Brumbach and his wife Mary Brumbach in their home. A 3-judge panel determined Garcia's fate, citing aggravated circumstances that warranted the death penalty. The court found that Garcia, though severely mentally ill, according to his defense, understood the wrongfulness of his actions. The murders were linked to Garcia's anger over being fired from Creighton's pathology department years earlier. Tecumseh State Correctional Institution serves as a stark reminder of the challenges Nebraska's prison system faces. From overcrowding and understaffing to violent riots and inmate deaths, the issues at play Tecumseh reflect deeper problems. Despite being a relatively new facility, its location and operational struggles have made it a hotspot for unrest, putting both inmates and staff at constant risk. Thank you for watching Chasing Crime, where we uncover the hidden stories behind America's most notorious prisons. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more in-depth looks at the prison system and the stories behind the walls. Stay safe.